these challenges together. So who would like first to ask a question? We'll take a few and then give Maggie an opportunity to answer, and then we'll see how much time we have. Who wants to go first? It always starts slow, like a wave.
This is standing between them and wine.
Thank you very much, Maggie. That was brilliant, but I expect nothing less of you. The question is a bit more on the policy side of things, and I think you know discussions very well around this water-food energy nexus that's projected behind you. And particularly in government circles and policy circles sometimes, people say the concept is fine, but because the implementation is split by these siloized ministries and government structures, you actually cannot really implement this. So can you maybe throw some insights or shed some light on this this notion on how do we break out of that siloization inside of the policy?
Well, I don't think, I'll give you my personal idea on this. I mean, I can't speak for the Nexus concept. It was sort of born in Davos and grew up in Bonn, so for me, it's an excellent tool to say to people, look, there was a time when we could use as much water as we wanted to in a number of purposes, water for cities, water for agriculture, etc. And now, if you build a big dam upstream, you suddenly got constraints on pressure on the water in the city. It's just a device, and that's why I like the little green triangle better, you know, to say, look, if you pull on one edge of this, you're going to cause strains in the rest of the system. I've worked with people who said, we need to quantify this, we need to set out, you know, what this actually means. And I said, well, on what level? You know, it's the level of the country that makes laws, rules, decisions, and regulations. If a country found it useful to quantify, and I think this is some of the things that Anders is sort of struggling with, if they found it useful to quantify the need for water for agriculture, the need for water for energy, and to look at these in juxtaposition, that would be fine. But, you know, to me, it's much more interesting as a concept because people recognize this. They say, oh yeah, you're right. And we had a meeting in Georgetown, or in Johannesburg, and invited people from, you know, mining sector, energy sector, agriculture, all the rest of it, just to talk through what possibilities there were for, you know, in the jargon you'd call them synergies, but they were talking about reuse, cyclical use, using water in a certain order so that different people could use it more. Again, my own guesstimate is that it's more useful just to bring people together. And instead of showing a lot of dreary charts that show that nobody can quite understand anyway, that show that things are getting worse quickly with a lot of colored bar graphs. You know, you put up a little green triangle and you say all the parts of this triangle are in competition for the same amount of water in this country that we've got, and you know what's happening now, and with climate change we may have less water. So if these different poles are in major competition, is there something we can do, the way we go about agriculture, energy, and cities, to actually make it better and easier? You know, as I say, my own view is that you don't have to take it any further because the achievements will be in their own fields, and that's just fine. I mean, when Rio Tinto brings out a big ad about the number of ways in which they've saved water, they're not growing food, they're not in the business of food, you know, but they're saving water. And so the atomization and going back into your own concept to improve your own showing in this, I think is fine. I don't think this is a device to get the players that are involved to engage in integrated water resource management. To me, that's something that is it is a goal of the national or the regional or the watershed authorities, is to get this achieved. Getting all of the players to think of themselves as doing this is a tall order. If you can get Rio Tinto or Chevron or Pepsi-Cola, you know, to reduce the water they're using in their value chain, or you can get a utility to realize that it can actually produce many kinds of water fit for purpose, rather than the old engineering concept that this utility, this water treatment plant only produces drinking water standard. Well, if you're producing drinking water in North America and 30% of that is flushed, wouldn't it be better to actually start imagining that both the water treatment plant and the piping within shopping malls, all the rest of it might be different to save that water? So I hope that answers. I sounded a little fragmented, but what I'm saying is I don't think we have to convert the people that are using the water into practitioners of this. I think we just have to make them think about how they can do things differently and possibly contribute to, therefore, there being more water. Because every time you don't need to bring in more water from a reservoir, you've got new water. And so you're probably running up your energy bill, but you've increased the amount of water that is available. So I don't know whether that answers it or not. We'll have to discuss it.
Over there?
Maggie, thank you very much for this presentation. I would like to ask the same question which I asked 2 years ago to the first presenter of annual lectures, Margaret, about what do you think about power of legal regulation? Again, you know that there is one example, rule of the road. So if you would like to drive a car, you should follow rule of the road, which is everywhere working the simple type. So I think that if we will create some kind of regulation, legal regulation for water management, for water use, it would maybe more cheaper rather than implementation of different technologies, just to change behavior of people. Do you believe in the power of the law?
It would be dangerous to sit in a room with Pat Wooters
Yes.
and say that, well, it could be important in some circumstances. But I think the rule of law here is indisputable. We need good laws for the same reason we need good policies. They have to be up there as the umbrella and as the statement and the codification of what it is that we think should happen. The propensity for laws to be obeyed depends on all sorts of other things. But that doesn't decrease the importance of having a good legal structure. The propensity to actually have the law obeyed is one of the things that I was pushing GWP in this presentation to try and understand better what the implementation challenges are, whether you're talking about a law or whether you're talking about a regulation. But when you're talking about relationships between countries, and in your neighborhood, one is, it's not likely that those issues are going to be solved through agreements on water. It would be good to have the law in there about what the agreement should be, but it's going to be other agreements, economic exchanges, investment exchanges, flood control, and other exchanges that actually cause them to be obeyed. It's the same with the Nile River, really. You know, there's no way you could divide up the Nile River so that everybody would be happy. But you could create enough prosperity and enough jobs by other means so that you would get enough people happy enough with it that the Nile Treaty would sort of hold. Because if you took the whole thing down to a law that actually talked about irrigation licenses and how much could be extracted, you couldn't get there. And then the minute the flow changed in the Nile River, you'd have the same problem as in the Murray-Darling. So it's important that you try and increase the prosperity around it so that people believe that if their prosperity is increasing, that they've probably got enough water to be getting on with. But the overhead umbrella is hugely important, because when people do start to decide to get along, the umbrella is there. Canada and the United States have had the same treaty on governing water, Boundary Waters Treaty, for I think 116 years now. And it's tremendously successful. Why? Not because it's the law, but because we've decided to get along on water issues, and so therefore we obey the law. If we had decided not to get along, the fact that the law is there probably would not stop the United States from doing anything any more than the softwood lumber laws have stopped them from doing what they want to do to us. But we keep hauling them back in front of the law in that case too, and eventually we win and they pay damages, and we still can't sell softwood lumber. But because Canada and the United States have decided that they want to get along on water, because it would be too difficult not to get along on water, we all obey the law. And so therefore that underlines the importance of there being a good law. So it's a bit of a circular argument. You need to build in a good law, but you can't depend on law alone to get you where you want to get. The relationships and the economic relationships and the political relationships are what makes countries want to obey the laws together. Or you take them to a GATT tribunal and they pay fines.
Okay, I'm sure there are other questions, but that hand went up so quickly. We'll just take that last one and then we really have to stop. So please, please.
Thanks, Margaret, for the enlightening speech. My name is Moses Teno from Uganda. You seem to point to the more need for studying the success stories. But we tend to believe we've been studying success stories. We normally have exhibitions, shows, and those kind of success stories. Wastewater management, small scale. The cases you have highlighted in the different countries, including in the Kenyan prisons. But isn't the issue beyond just studying them? What is critical that they are not getting scaled up? So for example, in Kenya, people must be seen. The different prisons must be seen what's going on. But then we don't get to see the scaling up. Isn't the issue beyond just studying success, but that there is something critical that is missing? What are we missing there?
Thank you, because that's a really important question, but I think you've put your finger on it. It isn't enough that the water community celebrates the Kenyan prison. The Kenyan prison system has to understand that this is one of their successes too, which goes back to my instant partnerships thing. You know, if GWP Kenya could make an instant partnership with the prison system to try and emulate this good example in as many places as possible, and could maybe interest somebody in helping to get this going, or get Board Up, which is a very good German NGO, very good at this, or there may be others working in Africa, but to try and make a positive example of this. So that's what I mean by studying success, not just the poster sessions, because you're right, they won't do it alone, and not just within the water community. You need to use success and then think about, okay, who would be interested in this? Well, the farmers who live around prisons could be interested in this, because they might get some of the improved agricultural water. Maybe the Kenyan prison system, I don't know. But you've got to take the success. I guess the point I was trying to make is that we take our threats, risks, and failures out and try and get people to join the parade. And threats, risks, and failures are they're why we're in this room, even at this hour of night, because we care and we know about them and we know how they have a particular impact on poor people. But they're not a very attractive way to get people to join the parade. And so that's what I mean by study success, is to try and figure out who you might get to join in to make a particular improvement. But the bigger question which you're asking is, why don't political leaders care enough to want to go and pick up that good example of a Kenyan prison? And why don't political leaders want to spend more capital in making sure that success does go further and making sure that risks are reduced, etc.? And when you figured out the answer to that, you can come and give the fourth lecture for this series, because boy, we'd all like to listen to you.
That's an excellent way for us to end. Maggie, when you were speaking, and usually when people are presenting this, you can hear noises and there's people rustling and people moving chairs. There was total silence, and we were all enwrapped in listening to you and